Listening, fill in the blanks.
Let's start.
But we live in changing times, and Whitebread is mindful of a worldwide decline in play, pointing out that over half the people in the world now live in cities. The opportunities for free play, which I experienced almost every day of my childhood, are becoming increasingly scarce, he says. Outdoor play is curtailed by perceptions of risk to do with traffic, as well as parents' increased wish to protect their children from being the victims of crime, and by the emphasis on earlier is better, which is leading to greater competition in academic learning in schools.
However much we may abhor it, deception comes naturally to all living things. Birds do it by feigning injury to lead hungry predators away from nesting young. Spider crabs do it by disguise, adorning themselves with strips of kelp and other debris. They pretend to be something they are not, and so escape their enemies. Nature amply rewards successful deceivers by allowing them to survive long enough to mate and reproduce. So it may come as no surprise to learn that human beings, who, according to psychologist Gerald Johnson of the University of South California, are lied to about 200 times a day, roughly one untruth every 5 minutes, often deceive for exactly the same reasons.
But knowing how to catch deceit can be just as important a survival skill as knowing how to tell a lie and get away with it. A person able to spot falsehood quickly is unlikely to be swindled by an unscrupulous business associate or hoodwinked by a devious spouse. Luckily, nature provides more than enough clues to trap dissemblers in their own tangled webs if you know where to look. By closely observing facial expressions, body language, and tone of voice, practically anyone can recognize the telltale signs of lying. Researchers are even programming computers, like those used on Lie Detector, to get at the truth by analyzing the same physical cues available to the naked eye and ear.
After a number of serious failures of governance, that is, how they are managed at the highest level, companies in Britain, as well as elsewhere, should consider radical changes to their directors' roles. It is clear that the role of a board director today is not an easy one. Following the 2008 financial meltdown, which resulted in a deeper and more prolonged period of economic downturn than anyone expected, the search for explanations in the many post-mortems of the crisis has meant blame has been spread far and wide. Governments, regulators, central banks and auditors have all been in the frame.
Tickling is caused by a light sensation across our skin. At times the light sensation can cause itching, however, most of the time it causes giggling. If a feather is gently moved across the surface of the skin, it can also cause tickling and giggling. Heavy laughter is caused by someone or something placing repeated pressure on a person and tickling a particular area. The spots tickled often are feet, toes, sides, underarms, and neck, which cause a great deal of laughter. Yngve Zoderman from Karolinska Institute has found that tickling sensations involve signals from nerve fibers. These nerve fibers are associated with pain and touch.
Antibiotic resistance is a growing problem seen in many different types of bacteria. As treatment options continue to dwindle, it has been recognized as a global threat, one that has grown worse not only because of a rise in resistance, but also due to the decrease in both the discovery and production of new drugs. Analysts have estimated that if no new antibiotics or alternative treatment strategies are found by 2050, 10 million people a year will die from antibiotic-resistant infections. This will be more deaths than from any other single cause, including cancer and diabetes.
For the moment, those benefiting most from the spoken corpus are foreign learners. Computers allow lexicographers to search quickly through more examples of real English, said Professor Jeffrey Leach of Lancaster University. They allow dictionaries to be more accurate and give a feel for how language is being used. The spoken corpus is part of the larger British National Corpus, an initiative carried out by several groups involved in the production of language learning materials, publishers, universities and the British Library. Such lasting fame would have shocked the humble Grimms. During their lifetimes the collection sold modestly in Germany, at first only a few hundred copies a year. The early editions were not even aimed at children. The brothers initially refused to consider illustrations, and scholarly footnotes took up almost as much space as the Tauks themselves. Jacob and Wilhelm viewed themselves as patriotic folklorists, not as entertainers of children. They began their work at a time when Germany had been overrun by the French under Napoleon, who were intent on suppressing local culture. As young, workaholic scholars, single and sharing a cramped flat, the brothers Grimm undertook the fairy tale collection with the goal of serving the endangered oral tradition of Germany, Capital English Zone. Working at the Jottensach Biological Research Station on the banks of the Rio Napo, Beccoloni focused his attention on a group of butterflies called Etomines. These distant relatives of Britain's Camberwell beauty are abundant throughout Central and South America and the Caribbean. They are famous for their bright colors, toxic bodies and complex mimetic relationships. They can comprise up to 85% of the individuals in a mimicry ring, and their patterns are mimicked not just by butterflies, but by other insects as diverse as damselflies and true bugs, says Philip DeVries of the Milwaukee Public Museum Center for Biodiversity Studies.
We think of museums as trustees of a nation's cultural capital. Curators choose and preserve artifacts for the benefit of future generations. They shape lasting impressions of communities and their aesthetic values and creativity. These are weighty responsibilities, and public museums have often been judged harshly for the selective legacies crafted by their key decision-makers. Since the mid-1980s, the feminist activist Guerrilla Girls have brought into focus significant gender and ethnic biases in museums around the world through a series of high-profile interventions, poster campaigns and exhibitions.
Like, share, subscribe the channel, and press the bell icon for further updates.